to me. So it's fantastic to be in Te Aroha. I should say tēnā koutou koutoa. Greetings to everyone. Greetings from my small town of Reefton to your small town of Te Aroha, which is slightly larger in size. I think you're a population of about 7,000 people, and we're a population of 1,000 people. But you know, there's some similarities, small town to small town. I just want to say thank you to Catherine, where she disappeared to. She's disappeared, for encouraging me to be here. It's been a little bit challenging for me to be physically here, but I am. I just had a gap in my work program, and it enabled me to travel yesterday up to Auckland, across here by car, and be here tonight, and then travel back to Christchurch tomorrow. So that window came. And I also want to thank the comms team and other people from the Matamata-Piako District Council for facilitating this evening as well. And I managed to have lunch with the team, and we had some good sharing, and I think that was beneficial too. And I see that you've got a really enthusiastic council comms team, and I think that enthusiasm is wider than that team, and so I think you're lucky having great people in your council. And I've met one of the councillors or two of the councillors, and they seem to be very enthusiastic as well, so I think you're lucky. I just want to say a thank you to Greg. Where's Greg? I'm staying in the wonderful Te Aroha Mountain Lodge, right there. And Greg was the consummate host when I arrived yesterday, and we spent about nearly 2 hours chatting, I guess. Our politics might be slightly different at the present time, but nevertheless we had some good dialogue, and there was some good information about the town shared from Greg. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is that Reefton is part of the visitor industry, and I like talking about the visitor industry rather than the tourism industry, because we're all visitors when we go somewhere. I'm a visitor in your town, you see. And so visitors need to be excellent guests, but you have to have excellent hosts, and Greg epitomised that, and I just wanted to thank him for it. So I'm going to talk tonight about Reefton, the small town, the thriving and vibrant small town, but it wasn't always that way. If we roll back 30 years, it was quite different. But I think nowadays it would have to be one of the most thriving small towns in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And it just didn't happen. You know, it happened because people made a commitment to the place, as I see you guys making a commitment to your town, Te Aroha. So I'm going to talk about Reefton, the thriving town. I'm just going to give an introduction about some of the key facts about Reefton first. I'm going to leap into a video which demonstrates the vibrancy of the town, and Emily's going to help me with that. And then I'll give some economic statistics, and then I'll roll into how the town was 3 decades ago, what my involvement has been, and look at 2 major steps in terms of transforming the town. So we'll just start with a window to the world, and that's... do I need that?
Yes, please.
Oh, right, okay. Right. See if this works. Can you hear me better as a consequence? Yes? I'll try and keep it here, you see, so I know what happens when the microphone moves, and you may or may not hear. So that's a window to the world. That's a window of my bedroom, looking down on Broadway, Reefton, and so it's an upper story perspective. I lived in the former National Bank building for 20 years. It was my home. Is that just faulted a bit, or is that better in terms of volume? Oh, right, okay. So that's looking down on Broadway, COVID 2020 lockdown, and so there's no activity. And COVID's going to come up in the presentation tonight. And it's quite interesting in terms of COVID, because if I thought of my journey, before COVID I was working in our cafe, post-COVID I was driving school buses, post that I was driving tour coaches, which I'm currently doing. And then last year, during the ski season, I was driving up the ski access roads, Wanaka and Queenstown, and up the Mount Hutt access road. And here am I tonight in Te Aroha. And so one doesn't quite know how life will unfold sometimes. and you have an expectation about life, and then it can sort of radically change, but often it can change for the better. Right, just got to get this right. So this is there's no dress rehearsal to this. So let's see if we can make it happen. So Reefton, the town of light. It's the town of light because we had electricity back in 1888. It's part of Te Aroha, the west coast of the South Island, and the west coast is a very elongated strip. It is the same distance between Wellington and Auckland. It's about 600 kilometres long and it's about 80 kilometres wide. So Reefton's nestled in the mountains. You've got a mountain in terms of your town. We're surrounded by 3 mountains. In fact, we have the Runner Range to the north, we have the Victoria Range to the east, and to the west we have the Paparoa Range. So we're a town in the mountains, I should say. We're about equidistant from Mawhera Greymouth or Kawateri Westport. We're about 80 kilometres from each of those. They're coastal towns, and they're 2 of the main towns. And south of Mawhera, there is Hokitika. So those are the 3 coastal towns, and we're an inland town in the mountains. We were born on hard rock underground mining from 1870 through to 1951, and 2 million ounces of gold was taken out. Men worked underground, women toiled on the surface. And that's a ratio of about half an ounce a tonne. So we were a wealthy place in the past. We most likely had the first public reticulated supply of electricity in the Southern Hemisphere in 1888. And if I was to ask you what reticulation meant, you might give me an answer. And there was stunned silence.
Power lines.
Sorry?
Power lines.
Power lines? Well, that's a good start. What do power lines do? They generally follow a path, a street pattern.
Yeah.
So when the power lines follow the street pattern, they're following a grid. So reticulation means a grid. So we were the first place, most likely in the Southern Hemisphere, where the power lines were put throughout the town, following the pattern of the roads. And uniquely, some of our wiring in those days, back in 1888, was actually underground wiring, as well as being overhead.
If only they continued.
So in terms of Reefton's economy today, coal mining is really important, and you might think, well, you know, that's inappropriate in terms of global warming. But the thing about our coal is that it's of high carbon content, and it's used for making steel, so it's exported overseas. And until we get the better technology to make steel without the use of coal and the carbon component, we have to use coal. And so West Coast coal is in high demand, and we have some of that in our town. We still have hard rock mining for gold, and from 2006 through to 2015, we had Oceana Gold with an open pit operation, and they took out 600,000 ounces of gold over that period of time. And currently we have Tasman mining, and they are 900 metres underground at the former Waiuta mine site. They're doing an exploration activity at the present time, and they hope to take out another 600,000 ounces of gold. And if you were to Google the price of gold today, you would find the spot price is greater than $2,000 an ounce. And so if you do a simple multiplication, 2,000 times 600,000, you get 1.2 billion. So gold is a valuable resource and an important part of our economy. We're a big hub of dairy farming on the west coast, so dairy farming is an important industry on the west coast, and we have the Yeti company, a Chinese company in Hokitika, and Western Milk Products. So our milk travels down to Hokitika for processing, and it makes milk powder to export overseas, predominantly to China, but it makes most of New Zealand's butter brands as well. So dairying is a big part of our West Coast economy and also Reefton's economy. Uniquely, we have the timber industry in Reefton. We harvest timber from sustained yield forests, private sector forests, and we turn that into added value product. Beech is one of the timbers that is utilised, and that's utilised for flooring, and it's utilised for making timber. We have the visitor industry or the tourism industry. I like, as you know, calling it the visitor industry. And we're surrounded by Victoria Conservation Park, which is New Zealand's largest conservation park of 250,000 hectares. And the former mining tracks are now the recreation opportunity for walking and also for mountain biking. And then we have the service industries for all of those other industries. We're managed by the Buller District Council. It just happens to be predominantly located in Kawatere Westport, but we have a small service centre in our small town of Reefton. So that's a broad overview. So we're just going to travel into a moment of vibrancy. We had the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association stay in Reefton about 3 weeks ago. I think they were here last year in Te Aroha. And so we had 500 camper vans positioned on our race course that brought 1,500 people into town. And so that almost expanded our population to 3,000 people. So we've got a small video clip that gives an outside perspective on Reefton, but there's some local expression at the same time.
So we have about 1,500 people at this event today, over the next 3 or 4 days. That equates to about 800 vehicles here. We can have a big impact on a small town like Reefton on a day-to-day basis. All 3 councils are motorhome friendly. They're all welcoming to motorhoming members. And so it's an opportunity to work together with all 3 councils through Development West Coast and promote the whole region to all of our members, not just for the rally.
The events like the Motorhome Rally are really great for Reefton. It definitely brings people into the area. We also have the Ghost Road and the Paparoas close by, so we get a lot of visitors coming, stopping in Reefton, stopping at the distillery. The feedback is everybody loves this little town.
Yeah, so Reefton has really been one of the success stories over COVID. So more domestic visitors came to Reefton, and 2023 was 17% higher than pre-pandemic in visitor spending, which is just a great result. And it's continuing to grow, so it's become a real destination in its own right.
I want to thank the people on the West Coast, the entire West Coast, and especially the little town of Reefton for welcoming us. They've done their shops up. Their shops have got motorhome stuff all through it. They've got the nice hanging baskets. We've been welcomed. The shop owners and the pubs particularly have been very welcoming, and we just love it and want to thank them and the entire West Coast for hosting us.
So that's a good window in terms of the vibrancy. I mean, we wouldn't have had the numbers of people coming in from the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association if there wasn't a destination to come to, and Reefton has become a destination. The Chief Executive of Development West Coast, it's our economic development agency, Heath Milne, spoke about some of the statistics, that visitor spending was up 17% higher than pre-COVID spending, and so it's quite useful sometimes to have statistics, because statistics provide a measure of how successful otherwise you might be. You can do qualitative reviews of success as well, so you can write some narratives about your success, but sometimes having some economic statistics sort of indicate whether you're on track or not on track. And so while he says that spending in Reefton was higher than pre-COVID, and it's one of the success stories during that COVID period, I would say that Reefton's been a success story before COVID and now after COVID. So, and that's because of its revitalisation. So I'm just going to go into some other statistics that give an overview about the economic performance of the town. So this is going back before COVID, and this is really year 2018. So this is the year ended March 2019. And so we look at GDP, or gross domestic product, that's activity in the economy, and that year ended, it was up 3.8 million. And so a total of nearly 30 million in terms of GDP just for our small town of the area around Reefton, which was quite significant. So that was a growth rate of 14.6%, and the New Zealand growth rate at the time was 3%. So Reefton was punching above its weight, in terms of its economic performance. And then in terms of the labour market, well, we were up 43 jobs in that period, and we had a total of 341. So when you think of the town as about 1,000 people, a third of the people in employment, that's quite significant. And again, we were above, we had a growth rate of 14.5%. The New Zealand growth rate was nearly 2%, so we were punching above our weight in terms of employment. And then in terms of population, we had a small increase. I talked about a population of 1,000, it says 960 there. So the Reefton growth rate was about 1%, the New Zealand growth rate just 1.6%. So we were close. So if we use some other statistics and we do a longer time frame comparison, and we look at
Sorry, is the running
economic statistics, so we're looking at 2019 and then we're comparing 2022, and you can see that the GDP has climbed substantially. In fact, has climbed 60%, which is significant. And then the labour market has also climbed over that period, and so there's been a substantive increase in jobs. And unusually, the population has declined, and I'm not quite sure if that statistic is real or otherwise, because I perceive, the population has grown. Anyway, statistics are useful, and we can see that, there's a real strength in terms of Reefton's economy. He's mentioned about, visitor spend, and if we look at the West Coast in terms of visitor spend, 2018 up to 2023, it declined quite significantly under COVID, and then has risen quite strongly. But if you look at the visitor spend in Reefton, it's continued to rise continually. It didn't actually dip over the COVID period. And you might ask the question, why was that? Can I ask you why you think that might have occurred?
No COVID.
No COVID? We definitely had COVID in Reefton. In fact, we had a lot of tension in Reefton because we had people that were strongly for vaccination. We had people that were strongly against vaccination. And even in my own business, we had, sort of half the team that was on each side. So there was quite a bit of tension over COVID. So yes, we did have COVID in Reefton. Yes?
Bit of a long shot, but most people were locked down during that period of time. But alcohol consumption went up during that time.
Yeah, that's right. And you're in that industry, Marcel, I know.
No overseas travel, so people travel domestically.
Yeah, no, that's the answer for sure. So the thing is that there was that domestic movement in terms of tourism and people not going overseas. And so because we had created a vital town, people came as a destination. And so that's why our spend has risen, and although it's slightly plateaued off, it's still high relative to the starting point in 2018.
People still working from home, still working even in COVID.
Well, yes, but for us, in terms of benefiting from tourism, we had to have people come, and that was the reality. And so you saw the reflection in terms of the moment of the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association. And the larger crowd, well, we have a significant number of motor caravans in Reefton on a day-by-day basis, and they're a big part of our economy, contributing to the visitor industry. Going to move to...
Yeah, you can do it.
You're still on it.
Just in terms of questions, we're aware we've said it's an hour, so we are going to do, Paul's going to speak for about 30 minutes, and then the rest of the time is for questions. So just hold them, and he's so good at answering questions because we had lunch with him, and you can fire anything at him and he has an answer. So
Thank you.
It's a very valuable time, and we'll get there.
So if we go back in time, so we go back in 3 decades, Reefton was a different town. So it was a very poor town, And, you know, in the 80s, there was the impact of the then Labour government, the Roger Douglas, or the Longy Roger Douglas government, and there was the privatisation, there was the introduction of neoliberal economics, and there was the downsizing of government departments. And so in Reefton we had a number of government departments. We had the likes of the New Zealand Forest Service, the New Zealand Railways, the Post Office. So when they were taken away, jobs were lost. And so we had the lack of income in our town. Reefton goes into a depressed state. People leave the town, and buildings in our main street degrade. You know, there wasn't the commercial activity in the main street. So Reefton became a very poor town 3 decades ago. So, I arrive in town, 1990, out of Matamata-Piako, Auckland, out of the Hauraki Gulf Maritime Park, and I was involved with the Department of Conservation, and I came to Reefton on a very dull, grey day in August, I think it was August 13th, 1990, to be the Field Centre Manager for the Department of Conservation, principally managing Victoria Conservation Park, Lewis Pass National Reserve, and a myriad of other areas of conservation land. So I came to Reefton with a couple of black marks against me. I came out of Auckland and that was a black mark. And I came to Reefton passionate about built heritage. I mean, my office on Kaua Island was in Sir George Grey's Victorian mansion. And that was just a delightful building to have an office in, and it was right by, you know, the sea. And you couldn't help but be passionate about, you know, heritage coming from a place like that. And then I discovered Reefton had wonderful heritage, and I celebrated that, so that became another black mark against me. But I ended up one of the key people transforming the town, and there were numerous people alongside me that you know, put input in, and I always acknowledge my good colleague, friend, partner, and business partner, Ronnie, because she was one of the key people to make things happen. Because I was the outsider, but she was the insider, she was the local. And it's really important, you know, for those of us that come from outside a place, to have someone or others that have that local contact and have that easy dialogue within their own community. And she facilitated that, and I celebrate that. So there's a good image there. There's a wonderful vintage car, but behind is some of the shops on Broadway, our main street. And that's what I witnessed when I came in 3 decades ago. So a very degraded main street. And so buildings have been treated rather poorly in terms of any repair, and that added to their poor appearance. So how did I get involved? I simply went to a community meeting like this, really. It was at the local school, and it was about Main Street. And so it was a community organisation called the Reefton Community Company that was enthusiastic about upgrading our main street. And there was a community meeting to see if there was interest. And I was the new boy in town, so I came along to the community meeting. And there was a lot of negative talk about the town, and people expressed that the town was dying. And then I put my hand up and said, well, you know, you might think it's dying, but you know, at least we should try and put some effort in. And if we try and we succeed, well, we succeed. If we try and we fail, at least we've put some effort in, you see. And that got me involved in a long commitment with the town. So it actually ended up a 30-year commitment. One of those mad journeys you go on. Sometimes you just get involved and then it just sort of catches you, and you keep on being involved, and that's been the reality in terms of Reefton and its revitalisation and my role. So the thing was that the town still had many of its Victorian buildings. They just needed to be cared for and retained. So what I want to do now is play another video clip. Just before you do that, Emily, and it's me talking this time round, And I talk about things like vision, I talk about things like commitment, I talk about things like journeys. I also have to say before the clip runs that I've journeyed out from being a manager for the Department of Conservation. I co-own a cafe and bakery. It's called the Broadway Tea Rooms and Bakery. We've kept the old name. I've run a tour company, co-owned a tour company for about the same time that we've had the cafe and bakery, so that's about 20 years now. And we did the visitor services up on the mine site for Oceana Gold. That's one of the things we did with our tour company. You'll hear in the video clip a reference to the Runanga Miners Hall. It's a big hall near Mawhero Greymouth. It's where the union and social activity led to the formation of, or made a great contribution to the formation of the Labour Party. And 4 of the great advocates in Runanga became ministers in the first Labour government of the 1935, the Michael Joseph Savage government. So I actually chair the Runanga Miners Hall restoration, and it's likely that that building might receive UNESCO World Heritage status. And just a little bit of background about that, you know, Reefton was a difficult journey in terms of its transformation. The Runanga Miners Hall has been a difficult journey in terms of its restoration. There was a poll taken by the Grey District Council about the retention of the building back 10 years ago, and 80% of the community wanted the building torn down. So, you know, we stood up, a few of us stood up and said we want it retained, and then we took ownership of the building, and then we've been on a long journey of restoration. So, you know, I've been involved in things where there hasn't always been support for progress, but nevertheless we've made progress. And just finally, there's a local project to generate electricity in Reefton again, and that's mentioned in the clip. So I seem to be a bit nerdy when I see myself and go, oh my God, is that really me? Well, it is, but you know. Yes.
Just join us for the basketball shouts.
Thank you.
Just give me a second.
So this is in our cafe. I'm making coffee, trying to. Bruce Smith, the mayor of the Western District Council, is interviewing me.
And I tell you what, the town is absolutely humming. Paul, what have you done to the place?
Well, it's taken 30 years, you know, it's taken a lot of hard work, but we've turned it into, I think, the most vibrant town on the West Coast.
I just interviewed a young lady called Patsy at the Reefton Distilling Company.
Indeed.
What a story that is.
We know Patsy well. Well, you know, that's a $2 to $4 million business initiative. It'll put us on the map. It's something quite different from other places which often do beer. I mean, we were the home of Monty's, but here we are, we're going to be the home of whiskey now. So.
Whiskey and gin and liqueurs, she tells me.
I know, isn't that amazing?
And not only that, the range of ideas that she's got.
Oh, tremendous. And the ideas relate to the place. So, you know, some of the flavours are going to come locally, which is fantastic.
That's exciting. Now, how on earth did you pull off that huge grant from lotteries for the power project?
Oh, the lottery for the power project. Well, it's taken 18 years. I was part of the mix of the team, and you know, we started with an idea, and we've just progressed. I mean, it's like the town, really. You have to start with an idea, and then you have to you have the vision, and then you've got to see it through, no matter what the obstacles, what the hurdles are, and that's what the Powerhouse team have done. So, you know, congratulations to Greg Top and team.
They've done a great job.
They've done a great job.
Now, rumour has it that you even got something for the miners' hall at Runanga.
Yes, we've managed to plug the gap. I can't say how we've plugged the gap at the present time.
Yeah, that's fine. No,
we've plugged the gap to release a $740,000 tender to repile the building. So that's going to be very exciting. I think the community's going to be surprised, but I think they're going to applaud us.
I love it. Look, hey, well done, Reefton. It just feels. I drive into the place, and the hair goes up in the back of my neck.
Well, it's got a great feel, you know, and I think we've created a great place for the people to live here, but we've also created an extraordinary place for people to come here.
It just feels like the beginning of a journey.
Well, it's for some of us it's been a long journey to get to this point, but there's another journey to go. So, and that's the important thing about every place, isn't it? You know that you come to a journey at the end of a journey, but then there's another journey to start. And folks, every town's got someone who's been plugging away for 30 years with the vision, and when it suddenly arrives, everyone goes, "Oh, this is quite neat, isn't it?"
That's right. I'm not quite sure how it happens, really. It didn't happen just because it just happened. It happened because there was a committed group of people to make a difference.
Well, Paul, look, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I know you're busy, there's people everywhere here. Hey, I'll leave you to it, and hey, well done, Reefton.
Always good to see you, Bruce.
See you later.
You can come any day.
Right, thank you.
So it's a good week clip, I think. There's a few things in there, and you know, I mentioned about having a vision, and you know, that's critically important for any place, and I would encourage you in Te Aroha to develop a vision. And simply, we created a vision by having a workshop, you know, just like a gathering that we are having here tonight. And we just had a facilitator come along that had a good skill set, and her name was Di Lucas, and she's one of New Zealand's leading architects and landscape architects. Sorry, I should say, one of New Zealand's leading landscape architects and architectural planners for Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so she came with a team, and we just simply had a workshop where she had an agenda and a list of topics, and she gave an introduction about each topic. And then we went away and workshopped each topic, and we wrote down information on sheets of paper, and then we pinned the paper up on a wall. And then one of the group presented, you know, the results of the dialogue that was on each piece of paper, and then we got feedback from the group. And then where there was support, we acknowledged the support on the sheets of paper. Where there were some differences, we wrote the differences on the pieces of paper. So at the end of the workshop, we had a series of papers that we analysed, and then could be documented, and then we had a plan. And the great thing was that we had, it was initiated by the community. We had various community groups at the workshop. We had a whole lot of different people. We had different age cohorts, including young people as well as every other spectrum of age. And we had the Inangahoa Community Board representatives there, and I'm not sure if we had any councillors. I think we probably had some councillors as well as community board members. So there was a good cross-section of the community, and there were 90 people. So if you thought of the population of Reefton being 1,000 people, we had 90, we had 10% of the community, and that's pretty good. And you know, 10% of the community having a voice, and then that voice being documented, you have something of substance that you can take forward. So I'm going to come back here, otherwise I'm not in the video. So that's just the range of topics that were discussed and then finally became documented. So we had things like town structure, facilities and services, activities, things like the built heritage, heritage management. So it was really, really comprehensive. I'm just going to pick up on one of those areas, and it's about heritage and how we could utilise heritage to generate activities. Now, this is an image of the Oddfellows Hall, and it's in use in terms of the image, but go back about 3 decades, and it was a dilapidated building and couldn't actually be utilised. So it was one of the buildings, like a number of community buildings, that we said to ourselves, could we utilise those to have a future and bring vibrancy into the community? And could we use the Oddfellows Hall, 1872 building, for shows and theatre? And the answer became yes down the track. And then in terms of Reefton's natural heritage, we're surrounded by Victoria Conservation Park. Could we utilise some opportunities? You know, could we have guided walks? Could we have nature tourism? Could we have mountain biking? Well, we've definitely said yes to mountain biking, and venture mountain biking is one of the most popular activities, and it's some of the best adventure mountain biking in New Zealand. Could we have some interpretation of the social heritage, like Walter Prince that brought electricity to Reefton in 1888? And the answer is yes, and I do a little one-act play in the Oddfellows Hall where I bring people into the darkened hall just with a candle burning on the stage. So they have to navigate in the dark of the night, so to speak. And then I give an overview of Walter Prince. I talk about his lectures that he gave about electricity in the hall, and then he lit the hall up with 16 incandescent light bulbs, and I light the hall up with 3 incandescent light bulbs. But that gives a contrast between the small warm light of the candle and the bright light of the incandescent light, which was transformational back in 1888. And then could we interpret historic events? You know, our power switched on in August 1888, and the answers become yes, and so we have a First Light Festival. So simply by putting ideas down on paper, it gave us the opportunity to make some decisions as to whether we would initiate those ideas, and we have done that in many aspects of taking the town forward. So I'm just going to read from the front page or the summary page of the document, because I think there's 3 really great statements there. And it says the Reefton Revival planning process is a voluntary, non-statutory process requested by the local community. This report documents community views expressed by those that participated in the exercise. The revival enables those views to be considered in public, private and corporate decision-making activities and in and around the town. So the thing is that when you have a document, you have detail, and you have information that can be referenced to. So when you have dialogue with others, you've got something to reference back to, and that's very helpful. In the absence of that, you've got nothing, you know. The viewpoints can change at any moment, but when you've got something that's documented, it's there in print, it's open for discussion and negotiation, so that's really important. And then second paragraph is the workshop provided an opportunity for local people to identify and document their preferred direction for Reefton's development. The Reefton Revival report can now be considered in the further development of the district plan. And you all know that district plans get reviewed from time to time. And so councils are always looking for submissions. And then if the community has its own plan, then it can take that plan or elements of that plan into the submission process. And then hopefully some of the plan, the community plan, gets incorporated into the district plan. And so that's another way that communities can be taken forward. And then the final one is the future's not seen in making Reefton just like other improved towns. Sometimes towns get improved, but they're fairly eclectic. Not about making it pretty. Well, we did make it pretty. Reefton Revival is about grabbing hold of its specialness, its quirkiness, and turning this into a comfortable commercial product. The specialness of Reefton built on as a sustainable resource for the future. So it's the character of the town that's really enabled the vibrancy to be generated, but also it's enabled a place where local residents have pride in their place, and it's a place that attracts people from the outside to come and visit because of the character. So one of the things that came out of the workshop, immediately we finished the workshop, was that the council had let a contract to add a library to its service centre, and the design that was presented, or that we became aware of, wasn't in character with the town. So it was kind of modern, but not in character with the town. So we had developed some building guidelines as part of the workshop process, and we went to the council and said, could we utilise the guidelines and redesign the building, albeit the contract had been let. So the council actually said yes, which is astonishing really. And so we had a narrow window of opportunity to do a redesign and then present the new design to the council. We had to go through 3 council meetings, very controversial at the time, but we got approval, and so we ended up with the council service centre with the library being added to it that was in character with the character of the town. And that's what got built. So although it's a modern building, the facade here where it says library is in character with the rest of the town. And when we got approval for the design, there were additional costs. There were about $24,000 of additional costs, and we had to meet those as a group, Reefton Revival group, and we did. And the way we ameliorated some of the costs was to do some of the work ourselves. So we painted the building, we painted the council's building to save money, save some of the money that we had to spend. And the facade on top, the green facade with the library name, I built that in my garage. And so that saved $5,000. So I've talked about 2 organisations. There was the Reefton Community Company that started off thinking about Main Streeting, and then there was Reefton Revival and the workshop and developing a vision. And then there was another community organisation that took the baton really, and that was ITP Reefton Promotions, and we got involved with the Reefton Shopfront project. So, you know, people have migrated from one organisation to the other, but the community has still had a voice. So the thing about the library building is that the idea that we could redesign a building to fit the town's character meant that we could consider enhancing the character of existing heritage buildings in Reefton on Broadway, and that got us going down the track of the Reefton Shopfront project. So it was about enhancing the facades of the Victorian shops that were on the main street. And so some of the business owners were enthusiastic about that, but the problem was that they couldn't get a loan from their banks to do the work. And so we went to Develop West Coast, and they had some very lateral thinking staff, and they decided that they could give a head loan to our promotions group. It was about $150,000 at the time, so back in 2000, and that we could on loan as a community organisation to individual businesses so that the shop fronts could be upgraded. And so that started the process of step by step, sections of the town, buildings being upgraded. So the thing about the project is that we had to do a concept design for each of the buildings so that business owners knew what they were going to do in terms of the work. That was a requirement of Develop West Coast that we needed to do that. It was also a requirement that we needed to develop a business plan for each of the business owners so that there would be ongoing benefit from the capital investment, so that they had a steer for taking their businesses forward. And so we did that, and the promotions group also took the overarching role to ensure that the project was implemented and completed. So we had a key role, the community organisation, in terms of taking the town forward. And as I mentioned just a few moments ago, you know, the character of the town has given pride to local people, and it attracts visitor interest. So this is the business I co-own with Ronnie. So this is the Broadway Tourism Bakery, or Cafe and Bakery as it is. And I want you to use your imagination that if you went back a couple of decades, the building actually looked quite different. And so it was actually painted bright blue and white, had plastic tables outside, the veranda posts were steel galvanised pipe, it had aluminium windows in the front of the building, and it lost its heritage facade on top. So it was actually quite a poor looking building, and through the shopfront project we were able to represent it in its form 100 years ago. And so you might ask the question, you know, why did I get involved, or why did Ronnie and I get involved in the business? Well, we were the community advocates, and we always said that, you know, people could do good business in Reefton, and we thought we should, you know, walk that path. So hence, out of the Department of Conservation, we stepped into running a cafe and bakery. So we ended up making a few mistakes along the road, and financially that was quite severe from time to time. But we've turned it into a thriving business. So when we took over the business, it had the owners working in the business and one other staff member, and it turned over $125,000 a year. And now we have 20 people working in the business, and it turns over $1.2 million a year. So, you know, a business like that in the small town of Reefton is quite extraordinary, but we wanted to develop an anchor business for the town, and that's what we have created. And you see the mountain bikes there. At this time of the year, we have Te Aroha, and that's the bike packing exercise from Cape Reinga in the top of the North Island down to Bluff, South Island, and they pass through Reefton. So it just so happened that because we made some good progress with several phases of the shopfront project, and some business owners decided to do it themselves. So rather than get a loan from us, the community organisation, they put effort into representing their own buildings. So once we'd made some really significant progress, other outside interests came in, and over half a dozen years ago we had John Bougen, who was in business Dress Smart Malls, and also Castle Hill Station come to town, and he came onto our page and he continued himself with purchasing buildings and representing buildings in their heritage form, and this is two of the buildings at the top of Main Street Broadway that he has purchased. They've both got quirky signage, and the Reefton Coffin Co is just a sign to attract interest. It's got nothing to do with the business, but it's just a sign to attract interest. And it's interesting that that building has just been sold, and sold to a woman who has family heritage in Marfello Greymouth, and she's transforming the building into a contemporary Italian pizza restaurant and bar. You know, so it's going to be our market. So, you know, that's a lift in business, really. You know, it's not just an average business, it's a high-end business that is going to be established. And then, as Marcel knows, because he's involved in the industry, Patsy Bass came in about half a dozen years ago, probably slightly less maybe, or maybe half a dozen, and established the Reefton Distilling Company. And so they produce Little Bitty Gin and George Moonlight whiskey. They give us a national profile and an international profile. And amazingly, the whiskey has just been exported into Scotland because it's of that quality. Then just to conclude, and I've gone over time a bit, this is the same window, slightly different perspective, and so this is post-COVID, and this is Broadway, and you can see some activity in the street, and those are cars outside Wilson's Miners Hotel. So, you know, we've progressed since COVID, but we've certainly progressed since 30 years ago when we started the revitalisation of the town. So I'll conclude there, and I'll answer any questions if you've got questions to come towards me.
I'm wondering if I'll use your mic and take it back and
Sure.
forth. Thank you.
Since you've been in our little town, have you had daylight hours to go up our main street?
And I need it back.
I'll yell. That's
Yeah.
all right.
Oh, yeah, we could test that.
You'll hear me.
Yes, I have. I really enjoyed your town, actually. I've come into your town, Te Aroha, and it's felt very warm. And I love the fact that, it's a town associated with a mountain or Monga. And, that gives a wonderful dimension to the town. I think your town's got some wonderful buildings that probably need some tender loving care as well. But I think you've got some really good elements, and if I think you put some thought into how you might represent the main street in conjunction with business owners and in conjunction with the council, I think you could have quite an extraordinary main street and quite an extraordinary town.
I think you've answered my question. I was going to say, did anything hit you straight away as you went up the street as to what could be done?
Well, it kind of hit me when I came into town yesterday afternoon. I thought it was just a wonderful town, a unique town. It's got this wonderful, strong main street, although the state highway sort of deviates off in the middle. It's still got a very strong, main street and some wonderful elements. And, I've walked up and down the main street several times today. I've had some delicious coffee. You make really good coffee in this town. And, I think there's some businesses that could certainly be accelerated on the main street as well. I think they've got potential.
So on that note, within Reefton, what percentage of people own their businesses, the shop, as well as working them? How many people own them out of town, and how much resistance did you have from owners of the buildings not to upgrade them?
Yeah. Predominantly most people lived in town that, owned the buildings. But we did have one particular family that owned about half a dozen, probably more buildings, that really did little with them, and they really degraded, and they were very reluctant to sell them. And if they were to sell them, they wanted, a high price, and that just wasn't going to happen. So that was a barrier. And so yes, we did have some resistance, but
how did you get around that? Because we do have a great deal owned out of town.
Yeah.
By resistant landlords.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was just saying at lunchtime, I think, that with the council staff, that if you were to develop a concept plan, how you might represent, the main street and the buildings in the main street, that might just be a starting point in terms of conversations.
So you didn't ask for forgiveness rather than permission?
Well, I probably went down the forgiveness path, because the thing is that I was strident about making a difference. I've said to people, some people, since I've been here, that probably about half a dozen people love me, and about the rest hate me. Because I held the line. Sometimes you've just got to be really strident about things, and you've really got to push, no matter the resistance. But hopefully you do get people on board over time. I think the thing is to make a start. And when you make a start and let's say a section of the town looks amazing, then that's a real incentive for others to be sort of part of it. Because where the section of the town that looks amazing, the businesses will thrive compared to the part of the town where the buildings may not be as amazing, I would suggest.
But the landlord doesn't help that.
Sorry?
The landlord doesn't help that.
Well, I think the thing is that you take a more...
I'm going to call questions next.
Yeah, sure. Sure. I'm trying to think of a more appropriate response, but sure. Where was I? What was the question, sorry?
Well, I just say that situation, that business situation, the landlord doesn't help that. It's outside of the landlord, doesn't it?
I think the thing is you take sort of a long-term perspective. I think if you're thinking that you want to make change overnight, change won't happen. I always say that it's never a sprint, it's always a marathon. So if you take a longer-term perspective, you might just get some of the more reluctant people on board, but over a longer time frame.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this one, sorry, no, this lady first. Sorry, and then you.
Hopefully I can talk loud enough. With the buildings that you have done the facade, have you been earthquake proofing them at the same time, or is it you're avoiding that and just fixing what it looks like for now?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that most of the buildings, almost entirely, I think, there are a couple of exceptions, are actually wooden buildings, and they're really resilient in terms of earthquakes, you know, seismic expression. The really key thing I say is that you've got to get the right engineers involved with the right buildings, you know, so not every engineer understands a wooden building, not every engineer understands a masonry or brick building. So you've got to get the right engineers. You get the right engineers, you get a more pragmatic result. And it may be a case also, you think about how you could resource that work for business owners as well. So instead of the business owner having to take the load, him or herself, it could be that the load is shared with other outside support and financial support. So it's about thinking laterally how you might achieve that result to bring the buildings up to a higher NBS standard.
You're going to be next. I'm just going to do that gentleman there, and then this lady here, and then the next person that catches my eye.
Sure.
You're now.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to congratulate you on your vision and the work that you've put into this project. 3 weeks ago, I was in Reefton as part of the NZMCA rally that was there. The feeling of common members that were there, nearly 1,500, Reefton is just a great spot to be. So you are able to capitalise on what we had in Te Aroha last year, and we now bring an annual event to Te Aroha as well. So going forward, we're looking as an organisation to help small towns develop and involve them into getting people to come, because we have a NZMCA park here, and the feedback I get almost daily from people never been to Te Aroha before, but now we're here, they stay one night, that's good, and they're here 2 or 3 nights is now becoming quite, and the feedback that the people from the motorhome park are saying about the locals and the coffee and everything else is just fantastic, and hopefully your town will build on that after the rally, which was very, very successful. So thanks for your hard work.
I think you also make another point. It's about collaboration is really important. So, you know, you can collaborate within your town, but you can collaborate wider than your town. And so your organisation that you're part of is part of the collaboration which will take this town forward. So, good on you.
Getting back to shop frontages,
yes.
I know all about the facades and things like that. My grandfather owned the Lovegrove building. I don't know if anybody knows it. It's got, okay. So that had 3 shops in it, and they had these lovely old frontages where you had the, you know, you put all the things in the window, and then there'd be this space that went in. It had a lot of character, but all of that was removed, and just these window flat frontages now, even though that the actual Lovegrove building and all the signage and everything is up there, and there's still the canopies, but those frontages are very boring.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the things that we looked at in Reefton. You know, I said that we had building design guidelines that came out of our workshop. So, you know, that might be something that you do here, that you develop some building guidelines for bringing back some of the features of buildings that make up Te Aroha and the main street. And then if you've got guidelines and maybe some concept drawings, you can encourage people to step in that direction.
I am going to set people free if you did want to go, because it has been an hour. We said it would be an hour, so if people are feeling rude if they're going to leave, totally fine. But otherwise, did you mind answering a few more questions?
That's
Is that
fine.
okay? All right, thank you. And we'll open up those doors. There's 10 coffee. Thank you for coming, and we might as well give Paul a round of applause.
Yeah, happy to answer other questions if you've got questions. Yes, my good councillor.
They say tonight that we've got an ageing population in Te
Yes.
Aroha.
Yeah.
Did you have that problem down in Reefton, and what pushback did you get on
An ageing population. I'd say that's an asset, our ageing population. And actually, I found that the you know, more mature people in our community were more supportive of the revitalisation. I think we got more of a pushback from those in the 40s and 50s, I guess. So it wasn't our more mature people that were against what we were doing. Is that the kind of...
Is that so that your more mature people were locals, they've been there all their life, and
Yeah.
40s and 50s.
They had been there most of their life too, but they came from a different position of wanting a modern town rather than celebrating the character of the town. And I mean, that's always the trick about most places, isn't it? You know, I mean, you might want to celebrate what's here now in Te Aroha, and then you might want to introduce new buildings as well. And I would say what you need to think about is, you know, what is the overall tone that you want to develop for the town? And, you know, some places reflect a really good tone that has a blend of heritage, but has contemporary buildings as well. I think the really important thing is that when we have new buildings, that we introduce really high quality architecture rather than just average architecture. And if I think about Mawhera Greymouth, you know, the larger companies have come in with their boxes. You know, you get the warehouse, which is a box, the countdown's a box, the Mitre 10 is a box, and brings no architectural contribution to Greymouth at all. So I think when you have new development, it's got to be high quality architectural development, so that you maintain a high quality for your town in terms of the built environment. There's a question. I'll take this gentleman first.
I was just going to say, years ago I was in Reefton, and there was a wonderful square with these real old miners with their big beards,
Yeah.
and had a fire going,
Yeah.
and they made flapjacks and handed them out,
Yeah.
and cups of tea out of a billy. And
Yeah,
it
that's
was
still there, the bearded miners.
so atmospheric.
Thank you.
It was almost like, and these guys probably did it for free.
The thing, I mean, you make another good point, is that you have to have spaces within towns for people to congregate, and that's really important. And you've got a wonderful reserve in Te Aroha that's has mineral water, and it's a thermal experience for people, but some of the reserve is underutilised, and how could you bring the vibrancy in town through better utilisation of that reserve? So spaces are really important in terms of town functionality. So,
You're just going to comment on the lady talking about the Loveridge buildings, where money is an issue, which it always is, but a lot of those buildings with just glass, with graphics, can be turned into something that's much more in vogue with what the town design is. So it's not necessary, you don't have to do structural alterations, you can dress up reasonably, for a reasonable sort of amount of money. And what they've done in town here is unoccupied shops have got beautiful pictures on them. Right
I think I've heard that from Emily today in terms of Thames and some repurposing of buildings through art. So I've expressed today that your arts community is critically important in taking your place forward. So using the talents of your art community is something that you should embrace.
When you formed your group, did you, what kind of structure, did you do it like a charitable trust, or like just trying to get my head around how the group comes together, what kind of structure?
Yeah, well that's a really good question. I mean, in terms of Reefton Revival, it was just an informal group, and it was an informal group over a number of years, and so it didn't have a formal structure like a society or trust. So sometimes that's advantageous, because sometimes, particularly with societies and trusts now, there are more constraints in terms of
Really
how
hard
they...
to form, really
how-
hard, they're really difficult.
Yeah, they're really difficult because, I'm in running a minor small trust, and, we have our accountabilities, particularly to charities, and there's some formal processes. And, formal structures can be useful, but informal structures can also be useful as well. And I suppose it's just having the right structure for the moment. Yeah.
So then how did the money flow?
How did money flow?
Yeah, for funding and things like that.
Well, I mean, that was the advantage of our promotions group, that it was actually a society, and so it was easy to bring funding into that organisation.
So some development.
So Development West Coast were happy to fund into a formal organisation, a society, and so we had structure, we had good procedures, And, you know, in terms of getting external funding, often having a formal organisation is really critical. And if you want to reach out to the bigger funders, that is really important, yeah.
Thank you. Did your council help you with any of the heritage funding that's available?
And the council has been a reluctant partner, really, and it's only been... Sorry?
Much like ours?
Well, I mean, I always say that the critical thing, you know, it's like democracy, really, and, you know, if we think of central government at the present time, and, you know, people have voted for a change and they have some expectations out of that change, and those expectations might be met or they might not be met. But the critical thing about democracy is that we must participate year by year. So we shouldn't just hand things to politicians for them to enact on our behalf. We should have ongoing dialogue, and so that's really important, where you have either formal engagement, informal engagement, and that you utilise submission processes, you know, really well. But it's really important that council is an integral part in taking your place forward. And so, you know, I'd be talking to the councillors, I'd be talking to the management team and the staff, and getting their participation. So the council is a partner in terms of taking your place Te Aroha forward.
These three ladies here and I are involved in a group to restore St. Mark's Church. If you look up past the clock, you will see a big white building,
yes,
which has to be strengthened through government legislation,
yes,
NBS. Bureaucracy has been a big hurdle.
Yes.
A big hurdle.
The really critical thing is that, I mean, often in community organisations you have people, so I'm hopefully not going to be offensive about this, so I'm just going to make a general sort of comment. That, you know, often in community organisations we get the people that we have around the table, and, you know, they may have some good skill sets and they might not have some good skill sets, and the skill sets might not be applicable for a particular project. So it's really important that you have the good skill sets around the table in terms of a community organisation taking a significant project like yours forward. And if you haven't got the skill sets around the table, like in terms of the Broomanga Miners Hall project, we didn't have all the skill sets for the substantive project that we are undertaking. So we've employed consultants, and that's made a huge difference, and it's given credibility to our project. And particularly with funding organisations, that credibility has been really important, and having those professionals on board has enabled the funding agencies to give funding to us for our project to advance it.
For quite a few people, I think the word church on the end of it is inhibiting, when in fact it's a great opportunity for tourism. It's got a 300-year-old organ that's absolutely priceless. It has stained glass windows that would surpass anything else, you know. And it's also a peace memorial, which many people didn't know it was a peace memorial.
Sounds to me like it's got a lot of attributes and significant attributes, and it sounds to me like it's a wonderful heritage building and a part of what covers your town and makes it attractive. So I wish you success with that project.
I don't think I've got 30 years to do it.
Well, can I just say, you know, the really important thing is to have succession, you know, and some things falter because people hold on. We were having a discussion about that, Greg, weren't we? That, you know, people are often in roles and they hold on, and then the organisation falters or the project falters. So I think it's really critical that we have succession. And, you know, if you have a community vision, or you have a vision in terms of a church that has a long-term time frame, you've got to have people that take, you know, pick it up and enable the project to come to a conclusion.